With the release of Halloween Ends, I decided I would go back and rank all 13 Halloween films from the worst to the best. The Halloween franchise is certainly not my favorite horror franchise, but it's definitely within my top 10. I do feel like the movies get kind of redundant because there's not really many things you can do with Michael Myers. But there are a lot of movies within this franchise that I do really, really love, and there's a couple that I do also hate. So I thought it'd be fun to just talk about each and every one of them and give a full order of which ones I think are the best and the worst. So coming in last place in the 13th spot is going to be Halloween Resurrection from 2002. This one is just purely a bad movie. Like, there's really nothing that I could say about this movie that's a positive. Maybe other than the fact that I do like how it doesn't take itself too seriously. Like, I get it's a very goofy, very dumb movie, but I'm glad it's not trying to take that seriously, because if it was, it would be even worse. It at least has some fun with it, but I don't really find most of that fun to be even that fun. It maybe is fun for a couple scenes here or there, but for the most part, it just comes across as cheesy and just bad. It doesn't help that the budget of this movie feels really low. Don't know what the exact budget was, but it feels very low. And I know these movies don't usually need a big budget, but I mean, if you really can see the budget being a problem, that's an issue. And the cast is probably one of the worst of any of the casts from any of the Halloween films. I do kind of like Thomas Nicholas as, I believe he played a character named Bill. He's from the American Pie franchise, and I liked him in it, probably because I, liked him in American Pie movies, so I kind of just transferred over to this movie as well. But at the same time, it really didn't hold up the movie that much. The kills were kind of boring. You had Busta Rhymes in this, and he was doing some weird like kung fu moves against Michael Myers, and it just never came across as anything that worked, in my opinion. The whole premise of this film, of these characters kind of being in this like game show, MTV reality show type thing, and it ends up turning into a just straight up slaughterhouse of Michael Myers killing everyone in there. It just feels like the most generic you can possibly do for a Michael Myers film, and it doesn't do anything interesting or unique. And again, it's just bad. The script is bad, dialogue is bad. It's a bad movie. Definitely doesn't help that they killed off Laurie Strode in the first 10 minutes of the film. I don't know whose idea that was, but it was just not a very good idea at all. In number 12 spot, I have Halloween: The Curse of Michael Myers from 1995. So this one, I think I see some love from like a certain group of people who tend to think this is actually very underrated, and I just can't agree with that. I think this is a very poor film. I think it has a couple of sweet spots here and there, specifically with Paul Rudd's character. This is, I believe, his first big film, and I do like him in the movie. Obviously, it's Paul Rudd. He's going to be pretty likable in whatever he's in, but he doesn't really hold up the movie that well. I think this is probably the most convoluted and just needlessly messy script that we've seen for a Halloween film. It's really complicated, and it just really holds everything back. It makes everything feel, like I said, messy, and there really isn't much sense to a lot of the plot lines going on here. You even just start off the film with a really bizarre opening, and you also recast Jamie, which was a weird decision. I believe it was because they didn't want to pay Danielle Harris the certain amount, and so they just recasted her. And I don't think this film has many interesting things to it. It's not a very entertaining film, and I think it was incredibly messy with its story, and it was trying to do things that I just don't think the Halloween franchise really should be doing. In the 11th place, I have Halloween 5: The Revenge of Michael Myers. So this movie really could have been something special, because Halloween 4 has a really awesome cliffhanger, and I was really hoping this movie would do something with that cliffhanger, and it could have. It really could have done something really interesting with Jamie being maybe the new Michael Myers. But instead they retcon that ending and then make this movie just something that's way less interesting than what it could have been. I do kind of like the whole connection between Jamie and Michael that they really focus on in this film, but it does get kind of annoying after a certain point. There's a pretty major focus on it for a large portion of the film. I think my biggest issue with this movie is Loomis. He's a great character, obviously. He's fantastic in the first couple films, but this is when he starts to just turn into a really mean, obnoxious, and just crazy old man. Like, he's definitely got that side to him in the first few films, don't get me wrong. But this is when he just goes off the rails, and he just starts to feel like a very unlikable character, and I don't really like him anymore. Donald Pleasance is incredible in the role, and he's still doing a good job here, but I just feel like the script they were giving him and the dialogue they were giving him just felt way too much, and it made, again, maybe not really like the character anymore. It's also a weird decision to kill off Rachel in this film when she was definitely the best character of Halloween 4. definitely weird because then they have this Tina character take over who is not a very interesting character and is very annoying. So that doesn't really help the film at all. I do really love the scene with the laundry chute, with Jamie going through the laundry chute. I think that's one of the best sequences in the Halloween franchise. But that one scene is obviously not going to hold up this movie to being much better than what it is. I do think it's just a very meh movie. I don't think it's terrible. It's definitely not as bad as the one below this, but I think it's still definitely not a good film. In number 10 spot, I have Halloween 2 from 1981. This is definitely an unpopular opinion. This is probably my most unpopular opinion on this whole list, because I know a lot of people love this, but I really don't think this was a great sequel to the original. I really didn't like it. First of all, of course, the whole thing about the relation between Michael Myers and Laurie, I never really liked. I really like that the new trilogy kind of retcon that. I'm glad they did that because I never liked the idea of Laurie being siblings with Michael. I just thought it was always a stupid plot line. And of course, Halloween 2 is the one that introduced it. And I just was never a fan of it. I did not like that idea. I don't know. I didn't like it. But that's not the only reason I don't like this film. This film does feel very weird in a lot of places. It obviously takes place on the same night as the original. And it feels like it kind of expands things just for the sake of it. Like it almost just drags this night out way longer than it has to be, with characters getting into really dumb situations, with Michael just somehow getting out of every situation possible. And it just spends a lot of time without really much happening. There's also a couple really wacky scenes that just feel so different in terms of tone compared to the original that I wasn't a fan of. And only thing I could say I really liked about this movie, because there are a couple things. I think the hospital setting is really awesome. I think Laurie is great in this film, just like in the original. But there's really not much more about this film that I really could say I like that much. I do think it is highly inferior to the original. And of course, that is just my opinion. I do love the soundtrack in this one. Just like the original, it has a banger soundtrack. Now, this might be another unpopular opinion, but in the number 9 spot, I'm going to have Halloween H2O. I know a lot of people like this probably more than I do, but it's still a decent movie in my opinion. I think every movie from here on out is at least decent. I do think Halloween H2O is decent. It's a pretty okay film. I would rewatch this, if given the time. I would rewatch it because it's really not that bad. I just don't know, again, if I like that direction that Halloween 2 went with the whole Laurie being siblings with Michael thing, and obviously this one really just exemplifies that to a large extent. But I do like the idea of bringing Laurie back after 20 years after the original. I do really like how this movie works, and I like I said, obviously I like Halloween 2018 more because it's higher on the list, but I do think this has probably a better execution of Laurie's character than Halloween 2018, because I like Halloween 2018 for way other reasons. But I do actually like Laurie's character in this movie a little bit more, and I do think her place in this film feels a little bit better than how she does in Halloween 2018. The movie definitely feels very Scream-like. I think that makes sense because it came out 2 years after Scream. Definitely has that late 90s feel, and a lot of that stuff works for the most part, but a lot of it also doesn't work in other ways. Definitely doesn't feel as on par with other Halloween films. I still like it. I'm not against it. I just don't really have many great things to say about it, the same way I don't have many terrible things to say about it either. It's just kind of okay. It's a decent movie. Coming number 8 spot, I have what actually might be my most unpopular opinion. I keep saying that. I keep saying this is my most unpopular, this is my most unpopular, but I think this one actually might be my most unpopular opinion. That is Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, in the number 8 spot. I like this movie. I don't think it's great, but I like it. Now, I know it doesn't really fit in the Halloween franchise. Of course not. It does not fit. But you have to understand what they were trying to do at this time. Halloween was not supposed to be a Michael Myers franchise. It was supposed to be an anthology series with a different story every movie. Obviously, they just decided to have 2 parts for the Michael Myers story, and then after the second part, they were like, okay, let's start over and just do some completely new Halloween-type film that is centered around Halloween in some way, right? And they do something completely different. No Michael Myers, none of that. And I think it's a good movie. I feel like a lot of people just rate it lowly because there's no Michael Myers. And they're like, oh, I'm expecting Michael Myers. But you have to rate it as a movie first. I think that's what you really should be doing. Rate it as a movie first. Of course, it'll affect it in some way, the fact that it is a part of a franchise where you expect to see Michael Myers. But just rate it as a movie first, and then it's a lot easier to actually give this movie a fair shot. And I really do enjoy this film. I think it's got a really eerie concept with this Silver Shamrock company that's planning to kill children on Halloween with the Halloween masks. It's got a really, really fucked up story and a lot of interesting imagery. And I love the main character of Daniel. I think he has a really good arc in this film, and I really do enjoy just watching him try to uncover the mystery of this company and try to fix everything and solve the problem. It feels like a Goosebumps episode, you know? It feels like a classic Goosebumps episode, but R-rated with some gruesome shit happening. Like the scene where the family gets killed by the masks was just one of the most gruesome scenes in the Halloween franchise. I think this is a damn good movie, and I wouldn't mind seeing more anthology-like films that are centered around Halloween. I know we see this, you know, other franchises like to do this. Other movies have done this before where they do like different Halloween-esque stories in one film, like Trick or Treat, for example. And I don't know, I think it's a cool concept. I think it makes sense why they focused it on Michael Myers later on, and they kind of forgot about this because this movie did really poorly because people were pissed that there was no Michael Myers. But I enjoy it. I'm not going to rate it poorly just because there's no Michael Myers. I don't think that's fair. In number 7th spot, I have Halloween Kills from 2021. So I have a lot of negatives about this movie. There's so many things I don't like about this movie, probably more than most of the movies below on this list. But the thing is, there are also a lot of things I actually really like about this movie. First of all, the kills are fantastic. It's in the name, Halloween Kills. They delivered on the kills. This is probably the best kills in the Halloween franchise. And if you're watching for the kills, if you're watching just to see Michael Myers kill people, this one is a very satisfying movie to watch because holy shit, he does some crazy things to people. It is gory, it is gruesome, and I think all of that is great. But the script is pretty bad. The dialogue in this movie is pretty bad. The themes they go for, I think, are good themes, but they don't work because the characters don't really present these themes in an organic way. You have some really weird sequences, like when they chase down that one guy who clearly does not look like Michael Myers, and they chase him down and cause him to jump to his death. He did not look anything like Michael. There's no way you can convince me that anyone there thought that actually was Michael. The dude was literally like 5'2" or something, where Michael's like this 6'4" beast. Like, I don't know. It made no sense to me why that would happen. So very just weird decisions in that department. I don't like how a lot of the characters in the movie are very dumb. They just make dumb decisions, a lot of dumb decisions that just get them into dumb situations that they shouldn't be in the first place. But again, the kills are really great, and I think this is definitely one of the most fun movies in the Halloween franchise. There is a lot of entertainment value to this film, and I definitely would rewatch this movie because it is a really rewatchable Halloween film because it's very fast-paced and it does not stop the action. So if you're in it for the action, if you're in it for the kills, you're gonna love this movie. I think Halloween Kills delivers on that, but the script is just not very good. Weirdly enough, the number 6 spot, Halloween Ends, I think has the exact opposite problem as Halloween Kills, where it's not enough of a Michael Myers movie. There's not enough kills. There's not enough gruesome and interesting kills. But I actually think the script is way better than what we see in Halloween Kills. I really do like the story in this movie. I think there's a lot of promise to it. I love the idea of evil taking different shapes, which is why Corey is the killer for a big part of this film. But at the end of the day, this is the finale of a Michael Myers-centric trilogy, and it to me just feels really weird why they would just forget about the fact that Michael Myers should be the prominent figure in this film. He should be. I know I was talking about Season of the Witch not needing Michael Myers, but this is like still part of the Michael Myers universe. It's still part of a trilogy centered around that. So I do think it's really weird that they didn't really give Michael Myers much focus in this film. But I do still think his ending with Laurie is satisfying in a pretty damn good 1v1 fight at the end of the movie. It was well choreographed. The directing of this movie was fantastic. The cinematography was really good. And like I said, Corey is actually a really interesting character. It's weird that he took the lead out of nowhere. I agree. It's very weird. But I do really like his character, and I really like his story in this movie. He honestly might be one of my favorite characters in the Halloween franchise. They didn't really make it clear as to what was happening with him, if it was the case of him always being evil and Michael just unleashing the evil, or if he's always had the evil in him and it was just slowly coming out over time. But then seeing Michael face to face is what kind of just triggered those like negative thoughts in him to let that evil out. Or if Michael literally just put the evil in him and it was never there in the first place and he just put it in there and that made him go crazy and start killing people. I don't know. Regardless, I really enjoyed his character. I really enjoyed what he did in the film. I'm not sure if I loved the conclusion of his character, but I really do like a lot of what they did with him in the movie. Laurie was probably at her best in this film since the original. I think Allison was great in this film, and I think there was a couple of really solid pieces of music in this, even though most of these movies do anyways, but I think some of this was really, really damn good. I think it was some of John and Cody Carpenter's best work. In the number 5 spot, Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. So the two Rob Zombie films I think are highly underrated. Definitely some more unpopular opinions here. I don't really think they're that bad. I think they have a lot of promise to them. The only thing I don't like about both of those movies, some of the dialogue can be a little bit over the top, which is pretty standard for a Rob Zombie film. I think the characters curse way too much, but that's really it. That's literally the only negative I can really say for these movies. I really don't have many other negatives to say. Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 is by far the scariest Michael Myers. He is terrifying in this movie. He is brutal. It's definitely the most gory, I would say, next to Halloween Kills. This movie has a lot of gory kills. The opening hospital sequence, I think, is one of the best sequences in the entire Halloween franchise. I know it's all a dream, that whole sequence, but it doesn't change the fact that it is an incredible sequence. I'm just in love with how that whole scene went down. This movie is very atmospheric. I think it's one of the most atmospheric Halloween films. I think Rob Zombie, a lot of people criticize him, like I said, for his script writing, and I agree, a lot of his dialogue can be kind of terrible, but the directing this man can do to make the scenes just feel so atmospheric and so immersive and so engaging, I think is where he's at his best. I think he really can make a scary slasher, and I would love to see more slashers from him. But the story department in this film, I do think, has a couple of issues here and there with some of the characters. There's a couple of really emotional deaths. Like, I've never really felt the need to tear up during a death in a Halloween film, but the death of Annie Brackett in this film, I think, is one of the most emotional scenes in the Halloween franchise, because you get to see Officer Brackett's reaction to it, of course, played by the wonderful Brad Dourif.
Oh, God. Oh, no, Andy. God, no. God, please.
And it is an emotional scene. Like, I've never felt like I've ever been close to a teardrop in a Halloween film before, but this scene did that for me because of how emotional it was, and it really made you feel the emotions that this whole situation can bring to Laurie Strode. I think this one focuses a lot on the psychology of trauma, and I think it does it pretty damn well. Now, the rest of the movies on this list I think are all pretty great films, all 4 of them, so let's get into this. Number 4 is Halloween 4: The Return of Michael Myers from 1988. This one is so awesome. I think it is definitely one of the best of the original films from the 80s, and the only issue I have with this movie is the mask. I think a lot of people will agree with me on that. The mask looks dumb in this movie. The eyes are just like too big. It looks dumb, the mask. I can't stand the mask in this movie. But that's the only issue I have with it. Everything else is fantastic. You have a great cast with Rachel and Jamie being some of my favorite characters from the Halloween franchise. Loomis was really great in this film. He still felt the same way he did in the original. Definitely didn't go in some crazy direction like, Halloween 5 did, but this one definitely kept things just more streamlined. And it had a very simple story. None of it was complicated. It was all just very simple, just slasher goodness. And again, love the atmosphere of this movie. I think that's a very important thing for Halloween films, is the atmosphere. I think it's by far, because I'm never expecting like a great story in most of these movies. Sometimes they have great stories, but most of the time I'm not expecting that. So atmosphere, I think, is definitely one of the most important things to nail, and this one definitely nails it, just like the one before this did on the ranking. So I don't really have much to say about this movie, honestly. Like I said, I don't think it does really many things wrong except for the mask. It's got solid kills, solid characters, solid scenes, sequences throughout the film, especially the rooftop sequence I think is really solid. I enjoy this film. It's a pretty damn good movie. And yes, that is correct. My top 3 are all of the films that are just titled Halloween. So kind of coincidental, but I don't know. I thought it was kind of funny. Number 3 is going to be Rob Zombie's Halloween from 2007. Again, like I was saying before, Rob Zombie's only issue is some of his script writing with the dialogue specifically. I think some of the dialogue in this movie is just horrendous, but that doesn't change the fact that it is a well-directed movie and atmospheric as hell. And I actually really like the backstory here. Like, most of the time, I'm not really a big fan of backstories for these slashers, especially if it's a slasher like Michael, who his backstory should be as simple as he's evil. That's it. We don't need a whole backstory. But at the end of the day, I kind of like this backstory because it didn't really make it seem like Michael was the way he was just because of his parents. It does seem like he was evil all along, and his parents just kind of exemplified that. Obviously, it was very different than the original, where his parents seemed to be very normal people. They didn't really go in depth with that, so it did seem like he was just evil and that was it. But I do like how this movie focused on the fact that the parents did definitely affect that in a way. It made it feel a little bit more real as opposed to just being like this evil person who's just evil. And I do kind of like that. I do like the portrayal of Michael Myers as a kid as well. I think the actor does a pretty good job. And then once we get to the stuff in the future where Michael Myers is the age we expect to see Michael Myers as, the movie gets really solid there. Like, I really love the movie from then on out. I think the flashbacks are just okay. Like I said, I'm not like against them. I don't really want them that much, but I'm not against them either. But once you get into the Michael Myers goodness, I think it's definitely some of the best stuff. It's obviously very similar to the original. It kind of does beat for beat what the original did, but in a more modern way, and it makes it, in my opinion, way more terrifying. Michael Myers is definitely more brutal here. He's definitely more gruesome than he is in the original. Original, he's more, stealthy and stuff, but this one, he just feels much more gruesome, and he just kind of like smashes through doors and stuff, and it's a very different take than the original Michael Myers. But I'm okay with that. I don't need every one of these films to feel the same. I'm not like gonna be mad at the fact that Michael Myers feels different in this movie than he does in the original. I want remakes to feel different than the original. I don't want them to feel the exact same. So I do like that aspect of this film. And honestly, I kind of like this version of Laurie. I love this version of Annie. And you have a new version of Loomis as well. And they're all okay to me. I don't really have a big issue with any of that. Again, I think it's atmospheric as hell. Rob Zombie knows how to set a damn good atmosphere. So I really do enjoy this film. I do think it's way better than people give it credit for. But of course, it is not the best of the Halloween franchise because there's 2 more that are just a bit better. Number 2 is going to be Halloween 2018. This is a solid sequel to the original. It does a great job of bringing us back to see how everything's been since 1978. Laurie's just gone insane, and I do kind of like what they did with her. I think some of it was a little over the top, especially what they do with her in Halloween Kills, but in this one, it wasn't as bad. I do like the idea of her being very paranoid and just kind of like setting up in that house in the middle of the woods, getting ready for Michael to come try to find her one day. And once shit starts to go down, it gets really good. And I like how her whole family just kind of thinks she's crazy this whole time. And then once it's revealed that Michael is out there, everyone's kind of like on her side now and like, okay, you were right. Can't believe it, but yes, you were right. We need to defend ourselves, and let's do whatever it takes to defend ourselves. And I love a lot of the cast in this movie as well. You have Allison, fantastic character to the Halloween franchise. Obviously, you have Karen, you have Cameron, you have Oscar, you have Dave, who is the babysitter, babysitting that kid Julian. Well, I believe the girl was actually babysitting, but Dave was just visiting. I loved those scenes with that babysitter. That kid Julian was hilarious, and a lot of the scenes in that house were really intense. And a lot of the stuff they do here with Michael Myers, because obviously this is early on, Halloween Kills is when everything's already gone to shit, but Halloween 2018 is before people kind of know what's going on, so you don't really have people panicking or anything like that. So you see Michael just going through houses, just slaughtering people one by one. That one scene where they do that one take of him just going through the neighborhood and just killing people, I think was one of the best scenes in the Halloween franchise for sure. I love this take of Michael Myers here as well. He definitely feels just like he did in the original. James Jude Courtney does a great job of portraying the character in a very just real and creepy and just Michael Myers-esque way. The only thing I don't like about this movie is that twist with the doctor. I do think it's a bit messy. It doesn't really explain itself the best, and it comes kind of out of nowhere. I understood what it was going for, but I'm not the biggest fan of it. Love the showdown here as well. The showdown between Laurie, Karen, and Allison versus Michael in the end was fantastic. So a lot of good stuff here. Really do enjoy this film. but it's not the best. The best film in the Halloween franchise is going to be the original from 1978. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. I've said this before. Without John Carpenter's incredible music, this movie would not be that great. I would probably have it like 5 or 6 spots lower. Now, I know most of these movies reuse the same music, but this is where it originally came from. And the use of music in this film really makes the ambience and the atmosphere so much better, and more, the tension like builds so much more because of that. Because this movie has this feel in the start where it just kind of feels like very stalkerish. You know, Michael's just kind of stalking Laurie, stalking his prey before he decides to actually, you know, do anything about it. And you kind of just feel just really uneasy the whole movie building up to when he actually starts attacking people. And a big part of that is the music and the directing, the shots they use, the really interesting positions they decide to put the camera. And then when we get to the actual point where he starts killing people, music ramps up, gets more intense, and things just go bizarre. Now, I do think pretty much number 2 to 7 on this list, probably all the way up to like Halloween Kills, like on my list, are probably more rewatchable movies. I would rather rewatch majority of the other movies on this list than the original Halloween, because I don't think it's a very rewatchable movie. I don't. It is dated. It definitely is dated. But I don't think that takes away from the importance of this film, as well as the brilliance of it in how it's directed, and again, how the tension builds with the music. The tension building just adds a lot to the build up to the conclusion in the end, where everything, like I said, just goes kind of bizarre at the end. And I love Jamie Lee Curtis as Laurie Strode here. She is really incredible in this film. She puts on a great performance of really just seeming like someone who is just in despair and just does not know what the hell to do. She has no idea what's going on. She's just hoping for the best because, you know, obviously Michael Myers is a terrifying dude because he's just very unpredictable. That's what makes him so terrifying. He's unpredictable. You don't know where he is. He hides in the dark. He just comes out slowly, and he just is so lifeless. You know, he doesn't act like a human at all. And that is what makes him such a brilliant slasher icon. And yeah, I really do enjoy this film. I think this is definitely the best of the Halloween franchise. Although, like I said, I do not think it's the most rewatchable. But I'm not rating them on how rewatchable they are. Obviously, I'm rating on how good I think they are. So let me know your guys' list in the comment section below. How would you rank the Halloween franchise from worst to best? I'm interested to see all of your thoughts and opinions. I will see you guys on my next one. Peace out.